In the previous lecture, we worked with functions, classes, and pointers in order to review some fundamental C++ concepts. We were also introduced to the QVector class, which is like a dynamic array, allowing us to have a container that resizes as necessary to accommodate multiple elements when the number of elements is not necessarily known at runtime. Therefore, we used the QVector class, which is similar to the STLVector class, to contain dynamically created objects, whose addresses we stored as pointers in a QVector object. In this lecture, we will explore how to work with files, including file input and output, often called file I/O. Even if you're familiar with the standard C++ libraries and classes for working with files, such as ifstream and offstream classes and the fstream library, don't skip this section. We will explore the more cute way of doing things using QTextStream and QFile classes. To start, let's create a new project called File Practice, write some code, and discuss it as we go along. So here we go. I'll take advantage of the fact they have the new button here. We've got a Qt console application. I'm going to make sure I'm under this demo work dir, and I'm going to create a subfolder to put everything in, because it generates build folders rather. Let's select that and file practice again. There we go. Next, finish, and there we go. Going to remove the stuff I don't need right here, and I guess we can change this to QTextStream. We're also going to be using QFile, and let's use QString as well. I'm going to go under the project settings so I don't forget it this time, under Run, and then Run in Terminal. Go back to Edit, and let's fill in some code. So I have file right here, output file, output.txt, and QFile input file for semantics. Even though we're going to have the same file for input, I'm creating two different objects to deal with them. And then open output file right here. I'm going to say output file dot open we're going to have QIO device write only. And then you use a single bar. It's like the OR symbol, but it's like bitwise OR. And then we'll put QIO device text. So this is for writing. And we're working with text. I'll create a QTextStream. We'll call it out instead of cout. That's for the output file. QTextStream in. That's for the input file. And of course, we're going to use QTextStream cout for standard output. That's what we need for that so far. I do at some point want to do out.flush and output file.close, so we know we're going to do that. And in between there, we're just going to write some names. So write out some names. So out, we're going to write John, and then we're going to have Rob, Ed, and Sally. All right, so far so good. Now, let me hit enter a couple times. See how, or now we do the input. So input file.open. This is going to open the same file that we just closed, but it's going to read it back into memory and do stuff with that data. Now this could be two separate projects if we wanted it to be. It could be the same project with maybe save and load options, hint hint, or any number of things that we'd want to work with. So in this case, QIO device, read only. There we go. QIO device text. And as far as the input object's concerned, we have this nice little at end. We're actually going to put while not at end. There we go. While not in.atEnd, while we're not at the end. So it's basically the EOF if we'd want to use that with standard library. And we've got QString line equals in.readLine. And now we've got cout, which we created earlier. And again, this is not the same cout that comes from the standard library. We just named it the same because we're used to using it like that. So that probably makes sense to do so. And down here, I'm going to flush cout and also clean up after ourselves here by closing the input file. So, and of course, let's run it. So we're going to go to build, and then we're going to build all projects. In this case, it's just one project. Make sure there's no errors, then go to run. And there you go. It's writing John, Rob, Ed, and Sally to the console because it wrote those to file and then read them back into memory. Now, what we could do if we want to is I'm going to go into the demo workdir that I've created, and also we're going to go into this folder right here, file practice, and oops, up here you see that there's the output.txt that was just created a little bit ago, and we can verify that it did in fact write those names to the file. So it wrote them to the file from main memory for persistence, and then we showed that we can bring it back into memory. So that's pretty cool. Awesome. So this doesn't work too much differently than what we do with the standard library in C++, right? So we now know, again, how to write data out to a file as well as to read it in from a file. It's important to note, again, that the source of the file we read in doesn't necessarily have to be the same project or program, but it often is in situations with, again, saving and opening files. Before moving on, I'd like to issue you a challenge. I'd like you to prompt the user for their name, and then to write the name that they enter to the file as well at the end. So, pause the video and try this little challenge out for yourself. Come back when you're done, or if you need some help. How'd that go for you? This one was a tiny bit trickier, but hopefully not too bad. Let's work on it together. So we do need, at the top here, after we create our little cout, we're going to create a cin based on standard input, and then we'll have a QString whose identifier is name. After we've written all these names here, I suppose it doesn't really matter where we do it, as long as we print it at the end. So now this is the challenge portion. Say, please enter your name. A couple extra spaces there. Notice there's no indel. And then we're going to flush that to the output stream. And then we grab the input. And now I'm going to write it to the file. There you go. And of course, we want to run this again, build it and run it to test it out to see what happens. Please enter your name. Since John is already in the list, I'm going to put a different name. So we'll put Grant. And in fact, it does show that we have successfully written it to file and then read it back into memory. Amazing work, everyone. Now we have a pretty solid handle on the basics of working with files in Qt. The next lecture is your section project. I'll see you over there.